So the astrology of the week of 28 March 2022 through 3 April 2022. This is a week celebrating Venus, really, and celebrating the end of Venus's malefic enclosure between Mars and Saturn. We're almost to the kind of full party of Venus entering Pisces. Not yet, that happens next week. But this week is about the levity and the release and relief that comes in these areas of our life that Venus represents. Pleasure, beauty, connection, joy. That's all here this week, and it gets this magnificent improvement, let's say. We also get to celebrate the new year again with the Aries New Moon. That arrives this week. So let's get into the week, let's get into the charts. My name's S.J. Anderson. Welcome to my channel, Weekly Astrology, the video that I put out every week called Weekly Astrology here on Sundays. So welcome here. Happy to be here, happy to be in another week. We are moving into the spring and it's lovely, it's wonderful. I can feel it so strong where I am. The heat, the warmth, people are happier. There's release, there's relief. The news is improving somewhat on economic news, the war news. All of those things are getting a little bit of a buoyancy and an improvement here as we get the configurations that have been so challenging, these fixed sign pile-ups with squaring the nodes and Saturn and Mars. As those begin to release, I think, and dissipate, I think this year can get quite interesting and fun and exciting. So let's dive in. Like I said, I'm diving in quite fast now. I want to dive in here and just look at what's going on this week. These are the three things that I'm going to focus on with this week's transits. The first is Venus's relief from that malefic enclosure, release from that malefic enclosure after it conjoins Saturn on the 28th of March, which is Monday at 9:30 in Central Europe. That's when Venus perfects the conjunction with Saturn and then is now freed from being squashed or jammed between Mars and Saturn. And it's a very interesting chart because the moon, actually the Aquarius moon, flows through that to activate that final day, those final 20. The moon's in Aquarius now as I record this, so the moon is activating it right now. This is kind of the final day, this kind of peak intensity with Venus and Mars and Saturn. The moon will be activating it, but that ends Monday, 28 March, 9:30 Central European Daylight Time. And so the relationships, the beauty, get this long needed boost to the extent you feel like you've needed that. I think we all can use this one way or another. But so that's number one. Number two, I'm going to check out the waning Pisces moon. This is the transit of the week. I know last week's video, people were saying, what's the transit of the week? What's the transit of the week? And that's fine. Thanks for asking. I will be sure to mention it always, but in my 3 points, I'm always going to have that transit of the week listed, and I'll say it explicitly here once we get to that chart. But it's this waning Pisces moon conjoined Jupiter, and it's one of the final moons here, actually the final moon with Jupiter in Pisces that doesn't have Mars making a hard aspect. So this is it. This is the one to really enjoy if you want to think about peak Pisces, the moon activating the healing waters and the truth of the Piscean. It's this week, and that moon arrives on Tuesday at 6:30 in the morning in Central Europe, and then we'll get that moon Wednesday, and then Thursday till about noon. And so it's really this Wednesday climax, Tuesday, Wednesday, and some on Thursday, where we have this final moon with Pisces without hard aspect to Mars. So releasing into the truths of the unknown is what I have here. It's best suited for that. And then the third thing I'm going to look at, big story this week, the third story, this Aries New Moon. It's an Aries New Moon. It arrives to further activate the new and the initiations of all kinds that you're making right now in your life. The new things you're starting with the sun in Aries, with this new spring in the Northern Hemisphere, the revivalism. Down under, I wonder what it's like. I guess temperatures are cooling. That must feel like a renewal if you're able to get outside a little bit more, chill out some. So I wonder about that fall sense of new down there, down under. But yeah, the idea of Aries maverickism, stepping out, saying, I'm going to do this, and then doing it. We get a new moon to activate that further. So those are the three stories this week, the three big stories. Stuff we're not going to talk about, but that happens this week. Is that Venus will conjoin the south bending on on Wednesday at early in the morning there at 9:30, that Venus south bending moment may be a preview for the eclipse that will come on the 30th of April, ruled by Venus. Venus also in Pisces here. So there's Venus with the south bending in Aquarius. That happens on Wednesday morning. You might be able to feel into that eclipse vibe. And then the second thing is, let's see here, on the weekend, the last day on Sunday at 1 a.m., you have the Mercury Cazimi, which should be really, really nice. I'm not going to go into that here. You know, I can't do every transit. It's just not the way that I want to go about these videos. I really want to try to extract the high level themes and really just talk about kind of these larger movements that are going to happen. That do happen. So, okay, let me come back in here. I'm turning off, I had a sound on from a notification. I turned that off so you won't get that sound. Okay, so let's dive in now, the first chart. Well, actually, I want to see if there's anything more that I want to talk about here. No, I mean, the moon, we'll see the moon and what the moon's doing. I'll be talking about that as we look at the charts in particular. But let's just go here to the first chart. This is that chart I was describing, Venus conjoined with Saturn on Monday, 21:27. On Central European Daylight Time, if you're on that daylight time. So here it is, and you can see the chart. What I find so interesting about it is that final moment. Venus is, you know, right in the same degree as Saturn all day Monday, and Mars is only 4 degrees back, 5 degrees back. And so it is quite close, Venus between these two malefic planets. And then you'll get the moon coming in to actually break up that enclosure. And why don't we just pull up Solar Fire and I can walk through the animation and just really examine this, what will happen with the moon, because the moon is going to come through and break it up. And the interesting thing is that the moon will have a benefic enclosure actually during a few of those hours. So here we go. If we're now, the moon comes to Mars, and that's about 7:30 in the morning. So the moon actually does break up this enclosure right out of the gate on Monday, 7:30 in the morning. And then the moon, you know, doesn't conjoin Saturn. Let me see here the exact hour that the moon will meet Saturn and end its breakup of the enclosure. So it's roughly about 4 in the afternoon in Central Europe, where the moon meets Saturn, and then that enclosure, Venus is left with that enclosure with Mars and Saturn for those last few hours. I guess that's about 5 hours from like 4:30 to 9:30 tomorrow and Monday, the 28th of March there in Central Europe. So anyhow, a little bit, this kind of technical parsing through is something we do as astrologers. It's a left brain skill set. It's a left brain field. You know, so much of it is technique and analysis and mathematics and these kind of detailed, you know, lists of things and exceptions and rules. It's all very much a left brain thing, and you see a little bit of that there when we really have to dial in these exact moments to understand when these waves of energy on Monday will peak and crest and, you know, have mitigation. So this, just to summarize here, it's really 4:30 on Monday till about 9:30 in Central Europe, where you have this kind of peak enclosure. So we're lucky of Venus. So we're lucky to have the moon breaking it up here. But what it also might do is just activate, you know, the Venus story, the Aquarius story, everything that's happening in the sector of the chart. So let me flip back to the PPT here. You know, I have here pleasure, relationships, artistry. I think for my money and my kind of thinking, those are the 3 major themes of Venus. It's connection with others, relational connection. It's beauty, like art, music, the senses, and having those senses satisfied. And then it is, what did I say here? Pleasure, you know, so you can find pleasure in relationship, right, with other people, laughter, connection, all kinds of physical pleasures and relationships that come with those, you know, and so all of that is Venusian. How we make ourselves beautiful, the haircuts. Like if you're waiting for a haircut election, I would say wait next week when Venus comes into Pisces. There's some really nice Venus elections with that exalted Venus in Pisces to get that haircut. So we're still, even after Venus leaves this enclosure, the rest of this week until 5 April, Venus is still in a Saturn ruled sign. And it will have been in Saturn ruled sign since like 5 November. So it's nearly, what is that? December, January, February, March, April. It's like 5 months. I have 4.5. It's like almost closer to 5 months, if not exactly 5 months, that Venus will have been either in Capricorn or Aquarius. That's a long, long time to have this planet of pleasure, relationships, and artistry restricted and contained in the cool separation of Saturn, you know. So I think it's really the 5th is the huge date, and that's all next week. But just keep in mind the context of this week is that it's breaking out of the enclosure, but still we're reaching toward events that are surrounding Venus that will not arrive this week. And here I have now Mars and Saturn is now left. They are left to really dance here, and that's the thing. Venus has been in between Mars and Saturn. And so now that Venus separates from Saturn, it leaves Mars applying to this conjunction with Saturn that will perfect, I think, on the 5th as well, maybe the 4th. But that same day, or within the same 24-hour period, Mars and Saturn meet, and then Venus enters Pisces. That's kind of the big day that's the next big one on the radar for, you know, kind of climactic turning points around some of the heavier astrology that's happening now. But after this Monday moment here, again, 28 March, Monday, 21:27 Central European Daylight Time, you will have Mars and Saturn now applying. And so there could be that difficulty that emerges, but it's, you know, it's in astrology, this is how it works. You gain one thing, but maybe you lose something else. You fixed signs, you know, like the astrology of this year. Fixed signs are now under heavy, heavy pressure with the nodes and Saturn and Mars there. But what about cardinal signs? They're doing okay. What about mutable signs with Jupiter and Pisces sending out those oppositions and squares to all mutable signs? Right now, mutable signs got a big upgrade at the beginning of this year when the nodes left Sagittarius, Gemini. And of course, so it's always a trade-off, and it's always shifting about where the pressure is, where the relief is, where the release is, where the opportunity is. That's the nature of the astrological craft. And so, you know, we get this improved Venus, but then we get this intensity of Mars and Saturn applying. I'll talk more about that later in this talk, but let's see what else is going on in this sign, in this chart rather. You know, I'm going to talk about these sextiles later, so I won't go into that now. Oh, the other thing I just want to mention, I have another slide, so let me click over to that other slide. I've talked about that. We're building up to the April 5th moment when Venus enters Pisces just after Mars and Saturn perfect their conjunction. And that is the true release day for Venus. That's truly like the dove being released after the flood, is the 5th April ingress of Venus into Pisces. And then that shifts the astrology. That day shifts, in my view, the astrology of the spring shifts into this building toward the Piscean release, which will include Jupiter conjoining Neptune in Pisces. It will include Venus and Jupiter co-present in Pisces, Venus and Jupiter conjoining in Pisces during an eclipse later in April. So it's the whole astrology now shifts. The fixed pileup and the tensions around that, the Venus enclosure, the Mars-Saturn conjunction, that's over on the 5th. And so then we get to kind of release into these freedom moment, maybe, if you can think about it that way, of Pisces and all that will be coming with Pisces. And I'll be exploring the Piscean archetype, hopefully more and more. I'll do a little bit in this video. But I mean, this is where the focus should be symbolically. What does Pisces mean? What does it mean to be swimming and be ruled by this large planet, Jupiter, the gas giant, that protects Earth from all of the asteroids with its gravity field, Jupiter's field of gravity? It brings in all of these objects that might harm Earth. So this great protector Jupiter is, you know, but symbolically water and flowing water that's so large and maybe uncontrollable. If you've been to a waterfall, you can see often these kind of spiritual moments in movies where people go under these waterfalls and they have these kind of release, spiritual release, or they're with their lover in a waterfall. And there's the truth of that. And that's why Venus is exalted in Pisces, right? The cleansing water shed moments that can happen with our connectivity. Venus will be there after the 5th with Jupiter, and all of this, the kind of thrust of the sky moves into this Piscean climax. And by the way, I've been talking about the peace deal in Ukraine potentially, and we saw this week de-escalation. And I'm so happy about it. God, I'm so relieved about it. We'll see if that holds, but I still think there will be some kind of formalized agreements in April. And this de-escalation moment is just, you can really see the difference in tone when Venus and Mars were with Pluto, and then they entered Aquarius, and Venus was enclosed, and it was like this peak Cuban Missile Crisis, you know, intensity. I remember the video I made, I was like, whoa, this is like, you know, a mutually assured destruction symbolism for the first time in our lives, this much of a fever pitch. And then we've come so far from that to where now it's kind of an afterthought, somewhat. I mean, at least in terms of the media, it's not as talked about, and there's some de-escalation on the horizon. So I love life. Thank you, reality, for helping us come back from the brink. And I think that will increase as Jupiter is in Pisces. I think we're coming into this kind of really beautiful summer with all of that Aries activation once Jupiter gets there with Mars. I mean, it's a summer of fun. Have some fun, would be my advice. I may go down to the beaches here where I am and just go be a beach bum for a couple of months. Walk around with flippers, and flippers is what we call them in my thongs or flippers. These are the shoes, the sandals that you can wear on the beach, and just go kind of lay around on beaches. Sounds fun, doesn't it? Okay, so let me come back. We're talking about Venus and Saturn conjoining on Monday, 21-27 in Central Europe, and it ends this enclosure of Venus, and it supports the pleasure, the artistry, the beauty, the relationships that Venus can signify. That's a big, big moment this week. And so your Venus story may be building. It's like that Pisces-Venus moment, and those eclipses are already building in our lives. And so this is just another chapter in whatever that story is going to be this week when Venus gets out and breaks free from the malefic planets. Okay, let's shift to the next chart. The next chart I want to look at here, 30 March. So this is Wednesday, 11:30 in Central Europe. That's in the morning. 11:30 a.m. This is my transit of the week, and I really want to, I guess, strongly encourage, and if I can influence in any way, just how cool this moon is this week. Just how awesome this transit of the week is, because we're never going to have the moon with Jupiter in Pisces. We're never going to have another one for 12 years that doesn't include either Mars in Pisces or Mars in Gemini. Because when Jupiter comes back into Pisces on 28 October 2022, Mars will be in Gemini. The whole of that basically just under 2-month period of Jupiter back in Pisces, Mars is just hanging out in Gemini in this long retrograde. So that Mars retrograde will dominate mutable signs and will be squaring Jupiter in Pisces. And so this is it. It's like, enjoy this. And I would think about with this moon, now we're going to get a Cancer moon. And by the way, I'm going to say this now. I will say it later on in the talk too, but this waxing cycle from the Aries New Moon that hits this week until that full moon in Libra is some of the best astrology I think we'll have for a long time, for a few months on either edge. Because this is a waxing cycle. You have Jupiter in Pisces, you'll have the moon, some really sweet lunar transits. This week, maybe we should talk about it here and I'll get solar fire up. And this is what I'm trying to do in my new videos. I'm focused on this chart, this Jupiter moon, this moon that's ruled by Jupiter with Jupiter. But it's a good segue to look at just why I'm thinking it's so good and what my logic here is. If we just move through, so you can see there's the moon I'm talking about. It's with Jupiter, and it's averse to Mars and Saturn. It's sextile and trine that nodal axis. And so it's just in terms of the aspects that the moon and Jupiter get to hang out together and mix together and have this kind of exchange, this dialogue about truth and our physical body and our home life and our nurturance and how that needs support right now, and how maybe the world needs, what is that song? The world needs love, sweet love, it's the only thing. I won't sing that there's just too little love. I love that tune. I'm trying to think about what movie that was very popular in when I was a kid, and we would hear that tune. But the world needs love, and where can we bring healing and love to our collective conscious, our collective unconscious, our shadows, our psyches, all of these big Piscean topics. I mean, this is it. It really gets to hang out here in aversion to the Aries moment that's sextiling the the Aquarian moment. And so I love that we can kind of step out of things a little bit and dig deep with and grapple with these deeper questions. It's a great time to do it. And this is that waning moon in the last phase before, again, this awesome cycle. That's what I came here to talk about. So we have the Aries New Moon. That's the last chart I'm going to talk about. And that's wonderful. And then you get this Taurus moon, this exalted moon in Taurus. Yes, with Uranus. Yes, with the North Node. Yes, square Mars and Saturn. Maybe not the best Taurus moon. But these just Gemini moon, I like the Gemini moon. The moon is received by Mercury in Aries, in its own Egyptian term. And for some of that Gemini moon, you've got this really sweet reception with that Mars-ruled Mercury in Aries. You have the moon with Ceres there in Gemini, and that's a nice moon to, thinking about the cultivation and maybe the earthy cultivation in your life. If you have a garden, that could be something useful. This whole waxing phase. But like these Cancer moons, and this will probably be the transit of the week next week. Look at this trine from both Venus and Jupiter. So I won't go too much farther, but I just want to underscore, and then you get this Mercury-ruled Virgo moon that comes later. And I think that the Mercury, I'll just do it now while we're here. We might as well with this interlude complete it. Yeah, Mercury will be in Taurus. So you get this trine from Mercury in the moon for the Virgo moon. It's just an awesome, awesome period. And then this Libra moon before fullness has the exalted Venus as its ruler. There's so many great charts in here for doing things that you want to increase in your life. Starting things, initiating things, doing things. And so I just wanted, the reason why I wanted to show you this is like, get excited. Like this is the time. This is the time for this year, I think, for this spring. This is the best pocket to like get out, start your projects, initiate projects, do things. All of the Aries energy, but then this very sweet moon overcome by Jupiter, and then an exalted Venus for a lot of this waxing cycle. So, okay, let me come back. That's just a little interlude and a rant here. I mean, less a rant, but more of just an imperative or a high suggestivity to use this waxing cycle for whatever you got going on in your life. You might want to make a list. What do I have going on? What are the things like my priorities? Okay, what are the actions that are tangible and achievable over this next 2 weeks? All right, I'm going to do this one and this one. A little bit of like, I guess, coaching there from this astrologer. But all right, let me just come back. That is the transit of the week here. And let me shift. I think I've got another slide with this. Yeah, the cleansing, healing truth that Jupiter can bring about and has brought about, even if they've been difficult to digest. And this could be reflection. It's a waning moon. You may want to lay in the bath, do your bath bomb, and just think about what happened since December 28th in that Pisces sector of your chart. And just, thank Jupiter. Thank you for the truth. I know it's been difficult, but thanks for the wisdom and the truth, the upgrades, the opportunities, the awareness that you've been given around anything in your life. What feels true now? What has emerged as truth that you think has empowered you or healed you in some ways? These are the things that Pisces can bring. And I have here, also it's a good idea to remember letting go into the unknown of life. We're in a new decade, right? It's 2022, but it kind of feels like these are the first new moments because of all of the crisis we went through, the 2 years of crisis and the lockdowns and the shutdowns. We're now sort of more comfortable than we ever have been. Jupiter is now in Aries. It's in Pisces, will be in Aries. 2022 has Jupiter out of the control of Saturn. And then we're going to have, Saturn leaves Aquarius next year, about a year from now. So we're moving out of this into the new decade. And I think that there's a sense of the unknown of life, the excitement. Like, think about, it's been tough, and there's toughness and suffering and pain, and we've all gone through it. But what's the newness and the exciting newness that we can kind of step into? We might not even know what it is yet. I think it's always good to remember. I mean, I think about some of the key moments in my life over the past 5 years. I had no idea, even like the day before, some of them, that these exciting things were about to happen. That I look back and think, man, that was the really cool stuff of like the last time Jupiter was in that fire sign Sagittarius. God, I had some cool things happen. I just remember how awesome life was, the adventure, right? And you're going to get some of that adventure energy this year, 5 months, Jupiter in Aries. So I really like this moon. Again, Tuesday, all of Wednesday. So a lot of Tuesday, most of Tuesday, all of Wednesday, and then that beginning half of Thursday. The moon with Jupiter, the last time they're together without Mars in hard aspect. Embrace the unknown. Okay, the new decade. I have the tumultuous times we're in. Just embrace it. And then I have here in quotes, trust God. I mean, whatever your conception of the reality is. I like God as a stand-in term. I know it's got a lot of baggage, but it just means this kind of unseen force that maybe has this higher force, and even if you think about it as the lattice work of reality, kind of if this is a matrix, the code, right, behind this reality, that force, that I do think love is a huge part of it. And there's this kind of loving force. Trust that. And this is a time to step into it. This lunar transit this week, awesome transit of the week. I would wait, let me just clarify this here. If you're looking to initiate some big projects, this is an awesome moment, okay? But I would wait till the waxing cycle. Next week, probably that Cancer moon, and I'll be talking all about it, the Virgo moon, some of that Libra moon. There's a lot of good stuff next week. But so this is more of like inner work, inner release, and kind of truth, access, and sort of expansion into these higher states of consciousness that I like for this moon. I mean, there it is. Look at Neptune coming very close to Jupiter. We're getting this Neptunian activation now, the strong Neptunian activation with Jupiter. And I think this moon is a perfect activation for that. I think everything I just said is quite Neptunian, the unknown of life, the new decade, the tumultuous times, the trusting the matrix, the kind of higher levels of the matrix, the loving force, this kind of loving force. I always use the Leonard Cohen quote. It's my favorite quote, maybe in his body of work. Love's the only engine of survival. And that's his song, The Future. Things are going to slide in all directions. Right, that's what we're in right now. Things are sliding in all directions. I've got these girls singing behind me. You can hear them clearly, I know, on the audio, and that's fine. They're walking down the stairs and they're going to leave. But things are going to slide in all directions, right? There won't be nothing you can hear anymore. He says measure anymore. And as things shift and slide, love is the engine, right, of survival. And I think that's Neptunian. That's a message of Neptune. I've always thought of Neptune as a spiritual energy. Fundamentally, it's about that love connection, I think, in a lot of ways. So, okay, let's shift out of it. That's the transit of the week. Enjoy it. The next chart I want to look at, 1st April 2022. Here, 8:30 in the morning, Friday. And we've got the new moon in Aries. And I think this will be a wonderful reinitiation is what I have here. A perfect reinitiation of the new year vibe. It's coming, it's right here in the 11 degrees Aries, or the 12th degree of Aries. And I want to point out here, there's been these conversations that I've seen on Twitter over the past few months, really been enjoying them. And I forgot the account, Michelle, I think is his name. He lives in Florida, I know that. Here, why don't I get up his account? But he's been bringing up like research about the Babylonian calendar and how this Babylonian calendar is based on the tropical zodiac. And let me see here. Let me see if I can find his account, just because I want to give him proper. Here it is, Michael Astrologizer, or Michelle Astrologizer, Astro. And I can't even spell this. Astro. This is his @ on Twitter. Astro, SPECCION. That's his @ But he's been tweeting a lot about this Babylonian calendar, and I was looking at that, and then I was looking at my own account. I remember tweeting about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, about the first month. I think it's called Nisan in this ancient Babylonian calendar. It's the appearance of that sliver of the new moon, the first one after the tropical moment, right? The spring equinox, the first sliver of the new moon, when that becomes visible, that was when they started their new year count. And so we get that this week. It's the beginning. And so this is why I think it's this reinitiation at some deeper levels. If you've missed the astrological new year, maybe you missed January 1st and we were kind of discombobulated with these transits. Now is a time when we can sort of reinitiate, recommit, more fire in the sky. The Aries, young moon in Aries, the first one after this equinox moment. So, and this is ancient, it goes all the way back, thousands and thousands of years. Human civilization has used this first new moon as a beginning point, as a starting point to understand the beginning of the year, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere. And it goes into these debates about, what zodiac and when, but we know the calendrics has the tropical point as highly important for this 12-month count that they had in Babylon all the way back. All right. And then I have here Mars is with Saturn. So Mars rules Aries, and this is a key point to just bring in here, the astrology over the next few weeks. We have this sextile, I was talking about it earlier, between everything in Aries, the moon and Mercury, being ruled by Mars in Aquarius. And this week, like I said earlier, when Venus separates from Saturn, now Mars has no buffer between itself and Saturn. And I think there's a rougher edge here to this new moon as a result. What's good about it is that it's a sextile aspect. And see, this is the kind of roughness that can support and may flow easily into the story. Less dynamic in the sense of like forcing us through pain and suffering to really challenge us in terms of the aspect of Mars and Saturn to this new moon. But Mars itself is in a dynamic moment with Saturn. And this is the boundaries, the no. Saturn says no, Mars says watch me. And it's this conflict, this mixing when you know, the universe or the authority restricts, but the passion, drive, and desire has a strong urge to break free. What results? And that can often shake foundation or test boundaries, all kinds of things that happen with the Mars-Saturn conjunction. That's the ruling energy of the new moon. And so what did I have here? Those intensities are real here and may require facing blocks. I think that this initiation moment of the new moon, there may be something here where you're asked to face some blocks. You might think, okay, or acknowledge them even, all right, that's a block. That is not a way forward at this time. So let me reorient my initiation. Let me replan things. And that's what I have here on the last slide, talking about using Mercury to go over details and plans. That's the support that Mercury can bring. You know, it's like, okay, certain things may be blocked because Saturn and Mars are conjoined and Mars rules the new moon. Maybe Mercury can help us go over the plans and designs in our life and maybe decide which way is better, or pausing or deciding not to act. That would certainly be fine with a new moon ruled by Mars conjoined Saturn, you know, or act without acting. These are all kinds of options here, and Mercury can help. This is why I love having Mercury in Aries. It does have this strategic planning side. All these ancient texts talk about military planners, Mercury-Mars combinations. These are guys looking at maps and saying, we'll attack in here and there and there. This kind of energy you can bring to the newness of the life that you're embracing and embedded in, this strategizing. To use the Aryan energy, the Aries energy is more of a strategizing energy, and maybe waiting for some of that cycle, right? The waning, the waxing cycle, particularly those like that Cancer moon next week. I know I'm already talking about the transit of next week's transit of the week this week, but that one is really the star. That one is the star. So, okay, coming back here, Aquarius is important too. I say Venus is important too, because Venus rules by Egyptian term. Mercury, the sun, and the moon are all ruled by Venus by Egyptian term here. And so Venus makes this sextile as well with Mars and Saturn. It's a freer Venus. It's one that's anticipating its impending freedom in Pisces. And it's one that has just been toughened up through a long, long period confronting Saturn, Pluto, Mars. I mean, this Venus had to run a gauntlet. And so I think this Venus is tough. It's tough enough to provide some real support. And I have here, you know, an analysis of the look of things can help. Sometimes, and this is true with writing, for example, you just take a step back, read the sentence you've written out loud and just say, does that sound nice? Is that pleasing to listen to? How does the sound of it? You can do the same like when you put a new outfit on. You just go, what's the look of this? Just get a quick yes or no. It's like checking in from maybe a more heady examination of the look, you know, oh, okay, no, you know, but deliberately, I think might be the key word here, deliberately checking in with the appearance of things might help clarify the plans in this new moon moment. You know, and sometimes it's just, no, it just doesn't look right. Something just doesn't look right. And that is that deliberate kind of check in with Venus. Okay, no, I need to maybe trim this beard up a little bit. Kind of like the beard, but okay, all right. Enough about that. So that's the transit, that's this final chart I want to look at. And I don't think there's really much else to say. I mean, this is the weekly astrology. I guess I will mention, you know, Mercury getting pretty close to being in the heart of the sun here and being in that Kazemi moment in its Egyptian terms. Why don't we just check in on that briefly? I know it's not one of the three big stories I chose, but let's just check in with this Sunday chart. Because I want to see, here it is, Mercury is with the sun. Oh no, that's the 13th of April. Let's go back here. We're looking for like the 3rd of April. And there's Mercury with the sun, and they are in Mercury's Egyptian terms. I think for that whole, the perfection of that aspect even. Just want to double check that. Yeah, and so just look for that. I think this Kazemi on, I think the Cazimi here this weekend is a moment where you can think about some of this thinking and strategizing and planning that I was just mentioning. You'll have that young Aries moon right here on Saturday, right when the Cazimi perfects. This is that moment I was talking about, Babylonian New Year, that sliver that's visible with Mercury and the Sun exact here. I think this would be a good time, maybe the last little moment to act. And this is like, so on Saturday, 5:30 Central European Daylight Time. It's like maybe another hour, and then before that on Saturday, I think is a good time to step in. Maybe these few hours on Saturday to do some of that action before the moon has to fall. It's exalt into Taurus, but really confront those harder aspects with Mars and Saturn. All right, so let's just end it there. I'm gonna pull a card to finish. As I always finish videos, just throwing up a card here. Let's just see what kind of story we can tell, what kind of new energy wants to emerge here to help us understand the week ahead, maybe clarify some of the topics I've talked about. You know, it's sortilege, so this is a randomization. And that's what's so beautiful about sortilege. You know, you really do leave it up to these unseen forces, to the gods, so to speak, to let those gods speak. So here we go, love it. The sun in Scorpio, that decan, the middle decan of Scorpio, harmony. And, you know, I mean, maybe we should come back. The sun is exalted in Aries right now. This is the sun, the decan of the sun in Scorpio. Quite a nice decan in the tarot systems. The sixes have an elegance, and they're really a supported number numerologically for the tarot pips. But I think there's something to be said about the sun being ruled by Mars, and this exaltation of the sun in Aries, and the fiery nature, and the assertive kind of leadership quality. What was I going to say? Decisive. It's like, maybe this is just decide. Like, it's time to just decide. You see that and you go and you say yes, you know. And remember, yes, Mars is with Saturn. That ends next week, but Venus is still there for a little bit Monday in between them. And even so, maybe, you know, maybe you work with that Mars-Saturn conjunction. Maybe that's the impetus that's going to get you clarified, or maybe be pushing you. I was saying earlier, it is sextile to the sun in Aries, but hard aspects by their nature, wherever they are, can push us, force us into action. So if you're forced into something this week by that Mars-Saturn conjunction applying very close all week, you know, you might need to use that solar decisiveness and just, if it locks in, if it's harmonious internally, it feels just, you might need to say yes and go. That's what a hard aspect can do, force us into that again. So, all right, that's the weekly tarot. That is the weekly astrology. Thank you for being here. It's always great to touch base about the astrology with you. And we will talk soon. Have an awesome, awesome week. Enjoy that Pisces moon and have a great, great week.